having the sensations because your body, like, literally knows something's wrong.
Yeah. And it's connected with your soul.
Yeah. Everything about you knows that something's wrong. So, yeah, it's weird. The feed's, like, completely gone.
It says it's fine over on my end.
Oh, well, I don't know.
No, it's looking weird.
Yeah.
What is happening?
Is it okay if I open the window?
Yeah, do it.
Or
Yeah, we lost, like, all of our viewers in here. Down to one viewer
well,
now,
it's still
which
recording.
is us, I'm sure.
Us, yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh, we got some viewers back. Sorry,
Come
guys.
back. Yeah.
We're having some major internet issues right now.
We need, like, mega internet. Is that a thing?
No, actually, we have great internet here at
That's why we need mega internet.
I guess everything. You need mega everything.
America.
Yes.
Jumbo fry.
What?
Don't ask me questions.
Is that from a commercial?
No.
No. Is that Parks and Rec?
It's the giant drink. Where
Right.
it's like child size and it's this big because it would fit.
What is that?
It's roughly the size of a
Is
liquefied
it
chocolate.
Fat Burger or something?
No, it's a haunch burger.
Haunch Burger. Okay. We're getting some weird feedback. I understand. Oh, I hear it.
Stream on
Okay.
YouTube.
There we go. I understand that what you're going through is like is cognitive dissonance, that you feel that you're between a rock and a hard place. But you got to understand that the reason why you feel you're between a rock and a hard place is because you are. Because there's two realities that are pushing on you. And at some point you have to accept one of those realities. So the question is, do you accept the truth or do you accept the lie? I would conjecture to you that you already know that one of those is true. It's the one where you actually have value. Otherwise, you wouldn't care that you are feeling the way that you do. So, we'll pray for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if somehow this finds you, reach out to us. Yeah. You got another one on you?
Yeah, different type of vibe here.
Sure. Our phone number is 971-208-5290. Our chat channels are open, so if you need to talk to us, we're also available on Instagram. You can DM us. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that is direct.
Is that the terminology?
Yeah,
cool kids
you
are
can
saying.
slip into our DMs.
Yeah, you can find our live feed right now on Instagram if you want to do that.
I
But yeah, go ahead, Jake.
All right. I have a feeling that things are going to go in a little pattern here of comfortable or uncomfortable or slightly intense.
Okay, I don't know what sort of
I
setup you're
don't
doing,
like
but-
this setup.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
Hey, and remember, if you think that this, that our conversation is worthwhile, share,
All the things.
we still have another 20 minutes until the first hour is done. So, what you got, Jake?
Yeah, it says, don't know how much more I can take. This is by...
Another one?
Yeah. I think it's her name is Silver Light.
I mean, the profile picture is flowers, so I'm gonna agree on this one.
Okay,
So-
Silver Light. Got it.
Now, this was posted the 15th of April, so just yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And here we go. It says, I'm having an awful time during this pandemic. I've got an over-energetic toddler. He's nearly 2, who loves being outside and climbing, and he's used to swimming and gymnastics and constant playgrounds to keep him sane. Now we can't do any of these things. He's learned to climb the kitchen bench. He's pulling the plants out of the garden. Sorry.
Why are you laughing?
Biting all day, every day for attention and finding it hilarious. Sorry. Tearing his books apart for some reason. Ignoring all of his toys. He wants Bluey on all day. I don't know what that is. I think that's Blue's Clues.
No.
He's also decided since going into lockdown that he doesn't need naps anymore. I'm 9 weeks away from having his little sister.
Oh, geez.
And I've been having multiple massive anxiety attacks and breakdowns, and I cannot get on top of it. I've been highly advised to be in constant contact with people, get outside and go places, do things to keep him entertained, take breaks while he sleeps, and drive around to get him to have a nap before I become severely depressed and suicidal. but there's literally nothing I can do. Other moms I know have been fined for driving around to put kids to sleep. We go to the park and let him ride his bike nearly every second day and go on walks in the park daily. I'm just guessing that these are what the words that she's using. But it's not helping. His behavior or making him sleep, surely there has to be some kind of exemption I can get to allow me to take proper care of my mental health, because as much as I am fully aware of why we need to do these things, if doing them results in me ending my life anyway, it was a waste of time doing them anyway.
Okay.
It was hard to read the last little paragraph here. I don't know
Okay.
if I said the right
Silver light.
sentences.
Silver light. What's your problem? Like you're 9 weeks away, so that puts you what, 30
I don't know how to do that.
something.
Oh my gosh.
30
I just
something.
dripped
Well, let's
tea all
see.
over.
35 is fine. I
don't
can't
know how to do
remember,
that.
but
You don't know how to do
you
that.
know, I know that you're hormonal, but you are way dramatic, and it sounds to me like that's part of the reason why your child is all over the place.
Yeah.
And for the record, like I may seem young on camera, but I've had my hand in raising many children and have my own children, both who are one who's like a crazy 3-year-old going on 13 or whatever, like running around.
3?
Yeah, he's 3.
Wow.
Shout out to Joe, and then my daughter also. But first of all, like, good job that you're having your kids go and play and stuff outside. Like, that's awesome. Like, what a privilege to be able to care for them and watch them and allow them to do that rather than melt their minds with TV or whatever that you're giving them. Climbing everything, that's a good thing. But so are boundaries. So I think there's a couple issues here. One is they don't understand their boundaries. The fact that they're biting shows that they don't understand their boundaries. The fact that they're climbing everything that you don't want them to climb shows that they don't understand their boundaries. And I'm not sure about that child's connection to you in terms of how they're raised, if they're like a daycare child or something like that. But clearly you need to establish better boundaries. So the way you're talking about it is as if this child gets to run roughshod all over you. First of all, that's the sign of a healthy child. That a child like wants to like climb and run all over and do so on and so forth, right?
It's loving life.
It shows that they feel they're safe. It shows that they are loving life, as you put it, Jake. So that's not a bad thing that your child wants to do that. But your child is also made in the image of God, and your child is made to connect to proper trust cycles. Your child needs to have proper attachment. They need to understand proper boundaries. You should be able to not just give them what we call trust of care, but you should also be able to impose trust of control. Not so that you can dominate them, but for their safety. You can't have a child crossing the street and get into an argument with them about whether you know what you're talking about as a car is about to hit them, right? So you need to be able to establish boundaries for them that then they can feel safe to move freely around and within. And the problem here is that you either don't know how to do that, or you don't have the time to do that, or haven't put in the time to do that. The truth is that, again, you're being over the top in acting like this child has to dominate you and you're going to kill yourself. Speaking like that shows to me part of your problem and is probably one of the reasons why your child is able to dominate you, because you are so easily put over the top. I'll give you a little bit of grace because you're pregnant, but just because you're pregnant doesn't mean that you can't be rational. And I know, we talk about pregnant brain, which is a real thing, but it doesn't excuse our responsibilities. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about that. Your job isn't to entertain him. It's to make him safe. That's your job. Make him safe. Make it so that he can explore things. If he wants to climb counters and so on and so forth, as long as he's not grabbing for knives or whatever, you know, you got to realize that he's gone through some major changes right now, and that he needs a level of accommodation for his level of activity that he should be having at this point in time. He should be climbing trees and running all over the parks and so on and so forth. That's not a bad thing. That's not you entertaining, that's you making him safe so that he can learn tactilely, right? So you need to figure out how to accommodate that, and part of making him safe is giving him boundaries and giving him direction.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that you learn the difference between restriction and direction, and direct your child in what he can or can't do, rather than just feel overwhelmed, you know, now he gets to run roughshod on you, whereas before he was running roughshod on everything else. It's a complete lie that there's nothing that you can do about it. And the idea of you having proper mental health care, the idea that it's a mutually exclusive thing, that you could take care of your child in the correct way and have proper mental health care, is also a complete lie. You can do both. Anyway, but I have a lot of experience, but I have somebody sitting next to me who has a lot of experience with that too, taking care of people's children. So I'm wondering what Justine thinks over here.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused just about, like, basically he's really active, and yeah, I'm also wondering if he usually goes to daycare or what, or is it just the fact that, like, his swimming pool and gymnastics and stuff are closed. But I mean, for kids like structure, they like a schedule, they like to understand what's going to happen and what to expect. And I mean, definitely with the pandemic that's going on, COVID-19, if you're feeling crazy and the schedule's completely different and things are really different, then he's going to pick up on that, and he's just going to pick up on it, and he's going to act crazy and different too.
Yeah.
And that's normal. That's to be expected. Like, they should be picking up on what's going on. So maybe just, like, sit him down. Well, once you get your thoughts figured out, and what you want to do for the day, and, like, have a schedule, like, just sit him down and explain things to him. You know, treat him like a human, talk to him.
Clear boundaries, clear guidelines.
Yeah, and just be clear on, like, what you expect. Like, you know, we're not going to climb in the counter right now. You can climb the tree later when we go to the park. Like, it's super simple. Just talk with him and tell him what you expect. And you can start, like, a jar where he can get good consequences and bad consequences, or, you know, some sort of chart that helps him to look forward to certain things, or helps him to understand his boundaries and what's expected. I mean, I know he's 2, but he seems like he'd be, like, interested in something like that, and you'd be surprised, like, how well kids can take to things like that, even when they are really young. So yeah, and I agree, like, him acting crazy and acting like a little crazy boy doesn't have to equal you becoming severely depressed and suicidal. And it says that someone has advised you to be in contact with people and get outside so you don't become severely depressed and suicidal. I don't know if, like, someone's feeding you that information, but those things, it doesn't have to equal that. Like, you, like, yeah, I laugh, but it's just because I'm uncomfortable. Like, I just have more hope for you than it equaling that, and it doesn't have to equal that. And I think Josh did mention that. So, yeah, that'd be my advice.
I just wanted to address one thing, and I know that this is a common thing that I have seen in parents where they become super worried that their child is going to get hurt, and it's to the point where the child then resents the parent, and they don't really grow, and they can become they can get mental sort of anxieties too, and during their development. But like, if you don't allow your child to make mistakes or to learn from their mistakes, and you constantly like are kind of holding their hand and not letting them learn or giving them information, then that could be very dangerous. And just reading off of what was being said, like the anxiety thing and the lack of control with this little boy, just makes me want to say, like, allow him to climb the counter, and like, obviously, like, if it's 10 feet tall, don't let him fall, but like, let him experience life, learn from his mistakes, let him get a little cut from picking a rose out of the flower, like, show him that things do happen, and that will go a long way, even as he's like becoming adolescent and into his teenage years and stuff like that. Things are still going to happen. He's going to experience things, and if you continuously direct him, he's going to go the opposite and then just do the stuff that you would never expect him to do, and it would be absurd. But it's actually, it makes sense because he hasn't been able to learn from any of his mistakes as a little boy. So let him do that, and kind of give him the opportunity to see exactly everything that life has to offer, but in a guided way, just like Josh was saying, like, guide him and keep him safe, but then let him learn too from his mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to, really, is don't freak out yourself. You were a kid once, you made it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't freak out yourself, and then give direction rather than restriction. So what I mean by that, in very practical terms, in terms of climbing the counter, is instead of saying, don't climb the counter, say, if you want to climb, this is what you can climb.
Yeah.
You give people, you phrase things in the positive where people can understand it better, meets people where they're coming from generally. You think that kid doesn't think he's doing anything wrong when he's climbing the counter? Probably not. Probably not it too. And 9 times out of 10, that's been my experience. Like, unless a child has an inappropriate relationship with attachment, specifically because they've learned that getting bad attention is the only means by which they get attention, generally they're not going to bring bad attention to themselves. So when they're doing something, they're just kind of being a little dumb because they're young and they're immature. So instead of reacting to them, respond to them by giving them direction. Oh, this is what you're trying to do. Or were you trying to do this? And then once they answer that, then you can direct them to where you want them to go. And if they break that, then what you need to do to establish proper trustive control is you need to hold that boundary. It's actually a sign of good health in your relationship with your child when they start pushing the boundary. I know that sounds weird, but the truth is that the reason why they do that is because they feel safe. So you've already established, I do care about you. And so the next thing is that you need to establish is I do know what's best for you. And how, like, if somebody knows that you care about them, how are they going to know that you know what's best for them if you don't give them an opportunity to learn consequences? The worst thing that you can do, and I think Jake is, right on the money here, the worst thing that you can do is not allow them to get the consequences that they have created in their world. better for you and better for them that you cry now when they're, you know, a 2-year-old, and they fall off the counter and, get bruised a little bit, than that you cry later when they're a 20-year-old and they, take their car off a ravine because they're driving drunk. They don't know how to follow the laws because they didn't have proper attachment when they were young, and they carried that over as a residual through all their stages of development. So give them direction, and that's what I think I'm missing in this conversation, in what you're talking about with your child. Like, I'm not hearing you doing things like having conversations with them, I'm not really hearing you taking the time to read or anything like that. It's more like, here's how I entertain my child, and I can't entertain my child that way anymore. And so, what does he want from me? I mean, that's kind of the impression I'm getting. Does that seem accurate to you guys?
And she's like, doesn't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and I think a lot of parents are suffering, quote unquote, from that right now, because people have really handed over the responsibility to care for their child to outsourced areas, whether it be the church, whether it be the government, whether it be a daycare or the school system. They don't really know how to interact with children. But guys, it's not magic. Children are people. People thrive when they have direction. They don't like it when they have restriction, and they want to have a sense of identity and learn initiative and things like that. So, like I said, your responsibility is to keep your child safe while they learn to be people. If you want to enable them to be people and you don't just want to entertain them, then give them things to do that will make them better people. What would you have liked? And I understand you're about to have another child along the way. The other big question that I have for you is, where's the father? Where's your support system in this? You are not alone in parenting your child. So where's your support system? Reach out to your support system and figure out, how they can help you. It's okay for you to say, this is like really hard for me, and so I need a break.
Right.
It's okay for you to say, I need a break. It's okay for you to say, I don't know what I'm doing, which is what that's kind of what you've done here. You've more whined about it than said, I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, and then as is a common feature of our show, don't buy into the narrative that you're telling yourself. This extremity of, now I'm going to kill myself, or this is going to cause me to kill myself. Hey, Mom, don't you know what you're setting up for your child when you say things like that? That's really, I don't know how else to say it. It's dumb. Like, when you say something like that, believe me, your child understands it.
Mm-hmm.
Your child is going to pick up on it. And
if he doesn't now, it's going to happen real soon.
Yeah. And, I think that you're just being hyperbolic, but, like, you're just kind of taking it to the extreme. But I think it's a really inappropriate thing to say. Your child doesn't have that level of control over you. You're an adult, and that's a 2-year-old. Stop telling yourself the narrative that your child has that control over you. It's not true. The reason why they have that control over you is because you allow them to. Take a breath. Take some time. Treat your child like they're an actual person and not a dog that needs to be entertained or whatever. And, calm down.
Mm-hmm.
It will be okay. I guarantee you, in almost every situation, worse people than you have parented better children.
Yeah.
It's just the truth. So, yeah, give direction, not restriction. Invest in your child with more than a sense of, I'm trying to entertain them. Calm down. Don't freak out, because when you do that, you model that sort of behavior for your child. And think twice about the way that you're talking, because the way that you're talking, your child will pick up on. it's not a good thing. Hey, we're hitting the 10 o'clock hour, so we are going to, let's switch gears and play a little game.
Okay.
Name.
I don't know, another game.
Another.
Football.
Let's
No.
do one of those questions. You got any more of those questions?
Is
Our phone number is, well, let me pull that up for you right here. Our phone number is 971-208-5290. We have an anonymous form in which you can send topics to talk about, and once we get done talking about whatever we're about to talk about, we'll talk about whatever topic came through.
Wow, there's a lot
That's
of what
really
if.
confusing.
Yeah.
But yes, you can like, share, and subscribe. We are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And we will be live for 30 minutes after the show as well. You can send us an email. Let's make sure that
Till 10:30.
that the rest of us are checking our, make sure that we're checking our,
Messages.
yes, our topic request form. And what do we got?
Oh, I do not know.
All right then.
I'm looking through these questions, and I don't know which one I want to ask.
Let's speed round it. What do you got?
Speed round.
What's something you like to do the old-fashioned way?
Don't even think about it. Answer. Go.
Great
Talk.
cheese.
Talk.
Great cheese and
Okay.
What is it? What's great cheese the old-fashioned
So
way?
we have a food processor that has a cheese grater attachment, but I hate the sound it makes. So I grate cheese by hand.
Right. Like it's the type where you like push.
Yeah, it makes a loud sound and it hurts my ears
I don't
and my
like that
brain and my
either.
soul.
Interesting. Okay. And what do you mean by talk the old-fashioned way?
Well, I don't like to say, keep up with the new lingo or the fresh new words. And I grew up.
You're not hip to the jive?
I'm not. I don't even
You
care to
jive
be.
talk.
I say things and I give people some new words that are actually old from the 20th century.
Okay.
Like I reckon and what have you.
Oh,
And,
reckon.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yonder, over yonder.
I keep it fresh by keeping it natural.
Old.
Fresh,
What,
but keeping it.
what did you say? Say that. We'll give you a second try.
Yeah.
Keep it fresh by what?
Keep real
said
old school.
Keeping it. I heard
Anyways.
from keeping it older.
I was gonna say natural for some reason,
Oh yes, that too.
but I don't know why. Anyway.
All right.
I got one.
Well, go.
I like
Let's
to
do
play
them.
music on a record player.
Oh.
Yeah, 100.
Because you're a hipster. Just kidding.
I am the furthest thing from a hipster.
I also.
So.
Old-fashioned way.
I'm not a hipster.
I was a hipster before it was cool.
What else you got?
Next question.
Well, I would like to answer the question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
And I like to actually write on paper. I don't really like typing on computers. And I don't like Bluetooth headphones.
Okay, well that's
That's
just
weird.
ridiculous.
I feel like that needs an explanation.
Bluetooth headphones are a blessing from God.
Well, anytime I try to connect to Bluetooth on my phone just freaks out, and so I usually use wired.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm right there with you, brother.
I don't have Bluetooth headphones.
Yeah.
Wait, I do,
Beep,
but
beep,
I don't
whoop,
use
whoop.
them.
Okay.
I have to charge them.
Here's the next question.
Next
Would you rather
question.
go hang gliding or whitewater rafting?
Neither, please.
Whitewater rafting, especially if the rapids are over level 3.
I've never done hang gliding before, but I've seen videos, and I'd like to see that happen to me. I want it.
Like you want a video of you hang gliding.
Yeah. I would
Right.
like to be at my computer and saying, that's me. I've done that, and that's me
Like
there.
you want like a screensaver of you, like a picture of you like flying over.
Yeah, and I want it to be like in
Grand Canyon
Jurassic
or
Park 2, where, or maybe it's 3, where they freaking die, but that's because they're on a boat. The boat explodes on rocks, then the hang glider falls
Spoilers.
into a.
You're talking about the opening scene from Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah.
It's not bad,
And
but
it goes
it's not bad.
into the Jurassic Park, and now he's got to protect. And then I turn into this freaking Tarzan type son who's fighting dinosaurs. I want that to happen to me, and then I teach
So
the
confused.
OG how to survive in this new park.
Like a combination of Jumanji and Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that's why I want to hang
Something
glide,
like
because
that.
that's how survivals do it.
Survivors.
Survivors. Thank you.
Survival.
I'm gonna survive with my new words.
There you go.
You learn something new every day.
Survivals.
What
Just
is
like-
hang gliding?
Where it's like you got a giant triangle flag thing and you're holding onto it for dear life, and
And then what happens?
you just glide. You just glide down.
Yeah, you go.
And you
up in
just
the
hope
air.
there's
It's
a
like you're
huge gust of
flying.
wind.
Well, yeah, and then you also you're like hooked in and stuff.
Okay, well, I don't know about that, but I've been whitewater rafting and I love it.
Yeah.
So I'd love to go again.
Yeah, whitewater rafting. Only if the rapids are higher than 2.
Oh yeah, I went in Wyoming and it was like, I thought I was gonna die, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Okay, one more question.
One.
Go for it.
How do you relax after a hard day of work?
I work harder.
Yeah. I take a 1-second break from work to work on something else.
I like how I relax from a hard day of work is I like to sit in my office with my good friends and watch, no joke, and watch shows about like making money, making food, making things. Like I like to watch The Profit with Marcus Lemonis. I like
Yes.
to watch Shark Tank.
Mr. Lemonis.
I like to watch Restaurant Impossible. I like it, you know, when
Yeah.
people are like deconstructing and reconstructing. So basically, I like watching other people work.
Right.
And then I like a bowl of popcorn and a live soda. That's what I like.
Mm-hmm. I like shows like that too, but for cars.
Mhm.
I also like home improvement type shows too. I get a kick out of that. Used to watch some Move That Buzz with my mom.
Pimp That Ride.
Extreme home makeover?
Yeah, Extreme
Oh.
Home
Pimp That
Improvement.
Ride.
Oh, actually, you guys are
Move
both
that
right.
bus, get in that new car.
I remember Pimp My Ride.
Please keep your jaw hinged.
Sorry.
That's an exhibit, right?
We're on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And you've been officially been pimped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
What do you like to, Justine?
Well, I didn't really answer
Wait,
the question,
what was the
but
question?
it's fine.
You said you like to watch those shows.
Sure.
Oh,
Baby
How do
doesn't
you
have
relax?
a
Yeah, I like that.
mind.
I have other things.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to take yours. I wanted to do. I agree with you.
I really think I like playing music,
Yeah.
playing video games, whatever.
Reading.
Justine.
I don't know. I don't know what I do.
That's-
Justine doesn't relax.
Justine
No.
goes and hides in her cave and
She's
watches
the
YouTube
Energizer
videos.
Rabbit.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, you know, I don't know. Pray to God, write in my journal, things like that. I'd say it's like more of a alone time because for me, I kind of have to like recharge away from people. I mean, I love you guys. I love all of you, but I'd say I kind of have to just kind of take some time alone and not have input and just write in my journal, talk to God, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 different ways that I do this. The first one Josh has mentioned because I also enjoy those shows, and usually I'm watching them with Josh.
It's true.
The second one is sitting down, either watching a movie or a show and painting something. I really enjoy that. The third one doesn't happen that often, but when I cook in the kitchen completely alone and no one bugs me and I get to listen to whatever music I want and I'm making food that I love. But
Yeah.
no one can come in at any point. So it doesn't happen very
Wow.
often. Did I say that right?
All right then. Should we get back to the show?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, this is another reminder. If you guys have answers to these questions, please post in the comments. I can see them, and I can like them, and maybe I'll even mention them.
Yes, it's true. We're monitoring all of our feeds right now.
All of them.
So yeah. So we got a comment that we want to talk about, or not a comment, through our anonymous topic request form, basically, which you can find on Facebook. You can find it on Facebook.
Yep. I'll share a link to it once I find it on
Yeah,
Facebook.
producer Jasmine will share a link to it, but you can actually find it in the posts to a request form on Jot. What's it called? Jot something. Jot form.
Drop one.
Anyway, so yeah, it's called the NITE LITE Radio Topic Request Form, and we got a topic that we wanted to discuss and give a little bit of time to, not too much time to. But before we get to it, I just want to sort of disclaim it because it's about, it's 10 o'clock. So there shouldn't be too much youngsters listening, but of course this show is in perpetuity. It's only live right now. People can watch it later. But the subject is on masturbation. And we don't shy away from topics in terms of content here, but when we're talking about sexuality, you're dealing with a sacred subject, You're dealing with a sacred subject. And so when you're dealing with a sacred subject, I just want to be clear that the way in which we're going to deal with it is we're going to treat it with respect as much as is possible. And to that end, we're going to talk about it, but you shouldn't expect us to share our own personal experiences. I'm not going to tell you what I've done with my wife, for instance, if it's not germane, because it's holy. So we don't need to go into those details and unless it really makes sense to. And I don't really see it making sense to in this particular topic. But we're also not going to shy away from the topic. So I'm going to read the topic to you, and then we're going to discuss it, see what we think. And it's a good question, and for some reason it's off my screen. I don't know what happened. I have to refresh. But the topic is on masturbation. The person who sent it in, they want to be called Brooklyn. Maybe they're in New York. I don't know.
Easy.
It's weird because I literally just had this open. Anybody else want to weigh in on that before I get going?
No, I think that you covered that really well. You did a great job. I have nothing to add.
I need a sound bit thing over here so I can do this applause sound effect or my personal favorite, air horn.
Okay, so that's weird. Our feed just went down. Okay, so this is from Brooklyn, and this is the topic. What are your guys' takes on, what's your guys' take on masturbation? Is it biblical? If it is, what guidelines should people take to have it remain biblical? If it's not biblical, how should we keep ourselves from falling into sexual sin when tempted to masturbate or have sex? So, Brooklyn, this is actually, the way that you're talking about it is more of a theological question than it is really like a counseling question. But it's got counseling applications, so I think it's worth discussing from that standpoint. The Bible doesn't talk about masturbation. There's some misunderstandings about that. I'm trying to bring this feedback up, and my mouse is very loud.
For the podcasters, the clack clack clack
is my mouse trying to pull up the live feed again. The Bible doesn't really talk about masturbation at all. There's a couple passages that people have taken to sort of make into masturbatory passages. I don't know if that's the way to put it, but there's a description of a guy named Onan, and he is supposed to. There's a whole thing with his brother's wife, his
brother's widow.
Yes, his brother's widow, and he's told by God that he's supposed to be with her, and there's a whole thing there. But then he chooses to have sex with her, but to pull out.
Right.
It's called onanism, believe it or not, is the term that came from that. But it's essentially the pull-out method. And so he uses that term, and then God essentially curses him. I can't remember if he might have struck him dead.
No, he struck him dead.
That's what I remember.
So he strikes him dead, and so there's that passage, but that's not really about masturbation. it could be about the pull-out method, but it's not even about the pull-out method. It's about rebellion against God when God tells you, what you're supposed to do. And that had to do with, like, God wanting the lineage to continue, and this guy deciding that he wasn't going to make that happen, but there's a whole thing there. So, but that's not about masturbation. There's a couple scriptures that do apply in regard to principles for sexuality, right? So, sex is always supposed to be in the context of a marriage relationship. So any sort of masturbatory practice that is outside the context of a marriage relationship could be immediately disqualified. It would be like, this is not biblical immediately. So any sort of lustful masturbation, where you're using pornography, that would be immediately disqualified as you can just, there's no question about it. There's no question, that's not okay. So lustful masturbation, any sort of like simulation with another person outside of marriage, that wouldn't be okay. Self-stimulation, like, that's out of control, like, that immediately wouldn't be okay. And I mentioned that one because a lot of the problem that people have with masturbation specifically is that it becomes sort of a ritualistic practice for them in their sexuality. It's something that they do to the point where it's compulsory. There's a compulsion toward it. And so, like, anything like that would not be okay either. So if masturbation is okay, then it would have to fall under very specific, it would have to be very specific. Just taking the lust out of the equation right there would make it really difficult for a man. From what I understand, I'm not a woman, but from what I understand, men and women, because they think differently, have different things attached to their sexuality to make their sexuality, for lack of a better way of putting it, to arouse them, right? Mm-hmm. So for men, it's more visual stimuli, and for women, it's more emotional. So I don't know that men and women and masturbation are necessarily the same in terms of, like, how that plays out. I just know that you can immediately say that almost all forms of masturbation are unbiblical at best and walking a line at worst. So or at worst and unbiblical at best. Wait.
So it's unbiblical at best, walking a line at worst, right?
No. Walking a line at best, right. Unbiblical at worst.
There
we go. Okay. We got it. So, yes, that was difficult. So, but there are certain circumstances where I think that could work. So I'm going to give you an idea, or I'm going to give you a thought experiment here. Let's say you've got a husband and wife. In 1 Corinthians, there's a thing about the husband and wife choosing to abstain from sexuality, because. So Paul says that in 1 Corinthians that the husband and wife should not abstain from sexuality within their relationship unless they both agree to. Right? So there's this idea of mutual consent within the relationship in regard to sexuality. So let's say there's a husband and wife and they're away from each other for a long time. One goes on a mission trip or something. I don't know. And so they agree in their relationship because there's a lot of negative effects. Well, I don't know if negative is the right term, but there are meaningful effects to not having sex. So basically, once you are sexually active, there's physiological effects to not having sex, right? So that have meaningful impact on your life. So maybe the husband and wife then agree that they can, manually stimulate themselves within the marriage, but not using any sort of, lustful material and so on and so forth. Could that be okay? I think it could. I think that is a line that every couple has to walk for themselves. But I think that every couple has to walk. Every married couple has to walk that line for themselves. Do I think that you could, like as a single person, that you could masturbate and have that be okay with God? Yes, I do. Again, it would have to walk a very, very, very specific line. And under most cases, with most people, it would be better for you not to even try to walk that line, because it is, a stimulating culture. I don't know how else to say that. It would just be really, really difficult in this day and age, let alone in your own personal thought process. But, your body is made to do, like, I don't think you should feel guilty that your taste buds like, the flavor of sweets. Mm-hmm. Your body is made to respond positively to sexual touch. I don't think that is inherently evil. I don't think that because of the fall, there's no scriptural evidence that because of the fall, all of a sudden we have a sex drive. We were made as sexual beings. So because of that, we respond that way. The thing is, it needs to be kept sacred. It needs to be kept holy. And so you have to do what's important, including making sacrifices to keep it that way. It's like anything in that regard. So that's kind of my general overall take on that subject. I don't know if that answers the question. What are your guys' take? Is it biblical? So is it biblical under a very set amount of circumstances? Yes. Actually, is it biblical? No, it's extra biblical. Mm-hmm. The Bible doesn't talk about masturbation. So under a very small set of circumstances, it could fall in line. It could fall in line with what is okay according to Scripture. That's what I would say. If it is, what guidelines should people take to have it remain biblical? Well, the ones in the Bible. Everything the Bible says about sexuality, follow those guidelines, and then it will remain biblical, because it's just another part of your sexuality. If it's not biblical, how should we keep ourselves from falling into sexual sin when tempted to masturbate or have sex? Hey, the answer to that question is the same thing as if it was biblical, right? Like falling into sexual sin, like sex is biblical. God is pro-sex, and God is sex positive. He made us to have sex. He made us to enjoy sex, and it's a good thing. God is sex positive, but we can fall into temptation and really, really mess that up, and it has dire, meaningful, and lasting consequences on us when we do that. So the same things that the Bible says about falling into temptations in regard to just regular sex, it's true of masturbation, because masturbation is an extension to the larger act. And you shouldn't think of them as distinct from each other in terms of the fact that maybe they're distinct rungs, but they're on a spectrum of your sexuality. So they're part of the same ladder. It may be the lowest rung on the ladder, but it's part of the same ladder. And you treat the ladder with holiness and so on and so forth. But what you do within the marriage relationship, as long as it follows those guidelines, is between you and your spouse and God.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Clarity question. But you had mentioned 1 Corinthians and husband and wife making a commitment that pauses their sexual intimacy.
Yeah.
It just made me think of another scripture from Paul where he gives, I guess, guidance or wisdom behind being willing to, like as a husband and wife, being willing to give to each other in that way to keep your partner from sinning.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask, like, what could he have meant in that way? Like, would that be lusting after different people, or, or just going behind the spouse's back to do something?
Can you say that a different way so I just to make sure I understand?
Just like I don't remember what exact scripture it is, but he says, it's better to give to your wife or your husband in that way to keep them from sinning.
Yeah, okay, so I know what passage you're talking about. Let me look it up. Yes, off the top of my head, I would say, without having looked it up quite yet, I would say that is the case, that to help keep your husband or wife sexually pure. So you got to understand, like, so there's an illustration in the book of Proverbs, and the illustration is that of wisdom and the whore. So basically, there's wisdom, and wisdom is like knocking on the door for people to come to answer her, to let them in. And then you have the whore, and the whore is beckoning people to come in to have sex with her, right? And so, and you can find this in Proverbs chapter 1. So it's like that. What we need to understand is that there is, in terms of our sexuality, which is directly connected to our understanding of who we are in God, which is why we can take that concept of wisdom and apply it to sex, essentially. In terms of that, we are constantly being tempted. Sex is like a carnival barker that is constantly calling us in to gratify ourselves.
Yeah.
And so what this is saying, what this passage does is it assumes that the carnival barker is calling for us to stray from wisdom, essentially. And I think the Apostle Paul is noting that. He's saying, hey, you're gonna face issues. Best way to, let's not pretend that you're not constantly being called to break partnership. In America, like that, we are constantly called to break partnership. We don't even assume that partnership lasts a lifetime, even though we say it in our vows. We don't even assume that that's the case.
Yeah.
We tend to think that pornography is completely normal and fine within the marriage relationship. We tend to think that messing around before getting married is fine. There's even such things as thruples, open relationships, so on and so forth, right? Conscious coupling and conscious decoupling, and all of these various things where they're not treating sex appropriately. That's the world. That's the world that our kids are growing up in.
Yeah.
But you guys can talk about it. Let me look up that passage.
Just thought of moving parts of a raging machine. So that, like what he was talking about, reminds me of a set of gears or something that turns a machine that just heads straight towards destruction.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be the transmission, turn that beast around as Christians.
Do you have any thoughts on it, Justine?
I don't have anything to add. I agree with what you're saying.
Okay. So I think we're looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Instructions on marriage. I think it's down at verse 7 or 8, but let me just be sure. Let's see. This might be the right passage. We can read what it has to say anyway. Okay, so 7. I wish everyone were single, just as I am. Yet each person has a special gift from God of one kind or another. This is Paul talking. So I say to those who aren't married and to widows, it's better to stay unmarried just as I am, but if they can't control themselves, they should go ahead and marry. It's better to marry than to burn with lust.
Mm-hmm.
That is an important thought process, right?
The whole chapter then.
Rather than go into lust, it's better to get married. But for those who are married, I have a command that comes not from me, but from the Lord. A wife must not leave her husband, but if she does leave him, let her remain single or else be reconciled to him. The husband must not leave his wife. There's a lot more here. Maybe this isn't the right... It's a lot to look through on the fly while we have dead air. Properly given to passion. Okay.
If any of our listeners can recognize this scripture, feel free to help us out here.
Yes.
I mean, this whole passage talks about it, but I'm not sure if this is the passage I'm looking for.
Well, I shared the whole passage comments, so feel free to read through it. Now we're at a different time. I said time weird. Time.
Let me look here. You guys can enjoy the typing. I said topping.
I was like, what? There's ice cream?
That's funny.
Oh, yeah.
1 through 10. Wow. There's
We need
a lot
like
of
wait.
verses.
I just need a soundboard over here, because then I can have like elevator music play during the dead air, just inevitable.
Here it is. 1 Corinthians 7:5. Do not deprive one another except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer. But then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control.
Right. That's exactly
so
what
we're talking about the same scripture.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, in regard to that, there's a right way and a wrong way to be sexual, and that extends way beyond masturbation. Masturbation is just on the spectrum of sexuality.
It could fall heavy in a lack of self-control.
Just like anything else.
Yeah.
Right? You can become obsessed with sex and sort of make it into an idol. And certainly this culture does that.
I was learning in my one of my health classes for college that there's been times where people would watch porn but wouldn't even masturbate to it, but they would just watch it out of comfort.
Sure.
Sort of thing.
Like the way I watch The Office.
Sure.
Oh my gosh. You really caught me off guard there.
Whatever that show does for you. I'm just kidding.
No, it's... Yeah. So it's... There... So if a person... yeah. It's a difficult one, right? Like it's difficult just because it's such a personal topic and it's something that you have to treat, again, with sacredness. I don't believe that you should tell somebody that experimenting with their bodily functions that cause them pleasure is innately evil. I can't think of any scripture that would justify that, and I certainly cannot find anywhere in scripture that talks about masturbation. And believe you me, masturbation existed back in the day. So, it was something that was there. What I will say is, if you want to masturbate, then you need to keep it in the rung, or keep it as a rung in the spectrum of sexuality in which we have to follow very specific rules, and keep it there. And it might be better for you not to do that. It might be easier for you not to do that. There's a really good article in gotquestions.org, which is a site I really like. And they bring up a couple things I just want to bring up. Specifically some verses. So 1 Corinthians 10:31, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. So I got a question for you. If maybe you haven't thought about this in terms of your sexuality, but you should. In terms of your sexuality with your wife or your husband, are you doing that for the glory of God? Now, let's take it down the rungs all the way to the first rung. If you are masturbating, are you doing that for the glory of God? I think that's a valid question to ask. If you can say that you're doing that for God's glory, which it is possible to do that, I would have to fall under a very specific set of thought processes to do it. But if you can say that, then okay, more power to you. Now remember this: everything that doesn't come from faith is sin. So if you're not fully convinced that what you're doing is to the glory of God, and you're just like, well, maybe this can be for God's glory, but you don't have an actual conviction, then that might be sinful. Just not even because the act itself is sinful, but because you yourself are not doing it from faith. And then, how about this? 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you were bought at a price, therefore honor God with your body. So, kind of going back to the glory of God, is what you're doing with your body honoring to God? Here's a question for you. In your spectrum of sexuality, going all the way down from masturbation all the way up to actual sex, if God was looking on it, do you think he would be ashamed? Or would he say, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be? Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself that question. And then another question that you have to ask yourself is this one. Going to Galatians 5:22-23, which says, the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. Right? Among other things. But the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. So, when masturbation is a focus, generally it's a focus that's out of control. That's a huge, there's statistics about it, right? So that's another thing. Is it something that's out of control? Is it something that's on your thought process all the time? You cannot tell me that masturbation isn't connected to lack of control when, the porn industry is like the #1 industry.
Yeah.
Which is, what's the porn industry for, guys? It's for masturbation. So, there's those 4 things that, that I would say to you. And then you add on to that the concept of making sure there's no lust involved, which gets rid of a whole bunch of different things, and making sure that it's within the correct spectrum of marriage. There's a lot there. So
I'll do you one more.
Okay.
If you would be, or you have to ask yourself, if you would be willing or have the ability to confess that you're doing that in front of your spouse, would you be able to say,
right,
this is what I am doing, fully confidently?
Right. Well, that's a really good indicator. Would you be ashamed of what you're doing? That's a really good indicator.
Mm-hmm.
And your spouse is, that's the most intimate relationship you should have. So, would you be ashamed before God? Would you be ashamed before your spouse? I understand, because your marriage relationship is sacred and holy, and the sexuality within it is to be maintained that way. Maybe you're not going to be talking about your masturbatory practices to your children or to your friends. Hey, the other day that's not, you shouldn't be doing that anyway. But if you are ashamed to talk about it in front of your wife or your husband, then something's not right there.
Yeah.
So that means that you are not convinced.
Right.
And then it goes into an issue of faith and sin and so on and so forth. So I hope what you're getting from this is it's not sort of a black and white issue, first of all. It's actually really dynamic, just like sexuality is, because it's on the rung of the spectrum of sexuality. So you need to treat it that way, and don't just immediately say the devil got into the kid when he starts masturbating. But rather than restrict, give direction, That's what I would say about this in all of these cases. And there are right ways and wrong ways. And yeah, the narrow path is the narrow path. That's why it's called the narrow path, because there isn't a lot of right ways to carry out the blessings that God gives us, and sexuality is one of the blessings that God gives us. And again, masturbation is just just one rung on the ladder of sexuality. So hopefully that hopefully that clears up that topic.
Sure.
And we can move on. What do you got for us?
Well, moving right along here into a sexual topic.
Oh, okay.
Okay then. Sorry. Can you send me that Got Questions link so I can post it into the comments?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jacob.
Actually,
Yeah,
no, I can't. But you can look it up. Just type in masturbation.
Alrighty.
Go to gotquestions.org.
I'm already
Type
there.
in masturbation.
On Got Questions.
I think is masturbation a sin? And I'm telling you guys,
According to the Bible.
gotquestions.org.
I sent a link to
It's
Got
a
Questions.
great site, and they have
On the-
so many questions that they
Okay.
answer, and I trust them on a scholarly level. So
Yeah,
check them out.
I got that link in particular.
And then you'll have another link too.
All of the.
Go for it.
This one's called My Boyfriend's Too Close with His Brother's Girlfriend.
Yikes.
My boyfriend's too close with his brother's girlfriend. Got it. What's
Yep.
the name of the person?
LW.
L-Dubs.
L-dubs.
Okay. Hit it.
Alright. I have been in a relationship for about 3.5 years. When I met my boyfriend, he was living with his brother, roommate style. And his brother had a girlfriend of about 2 years. Things were going great until I started to notice little things between my boyfriend and his brother's girlfriend, like she would go in his room and lie on his bed even with me there. They would touch each other and poke each other. One day I was leaving for work and it was just the three of us in the house, and they both seemed anxious, and they both walked me to the door as if they were rushing me to leave. We all went on vacation together, and he would stare at her entire body in such an obvious way I'm shocked his brother didn't notice. I catch him staring at her every time she's around. He also had a small bruise on his hand one day, and as soon as she sat next to him, she noticed it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying she is extremely attentive to him. Another time, my boyfriend was in the shower in our room, and she came in looking for tissue, and I said, "He's in the shower right now." She went in the bathroom anyway, knowing he was in there and naked. She seems to be too comfortable for my liking. Another day, he picked me up, and when we got back to his house, it was just her there, and she peeked her head out from his brother's room, and he ran to her, and I couldn't hear what was said, but I was in mid-sentence when he did it. But when it's just me and him, if she comes up in conversation, he talks bad about her, and how she isn't really wife material for his brother, and how he doesn't think she's pretty, or even said her breath stinks sometimes. I'm so damn confused. The energy when she comes around shifts between us, and I can feel it to an extreme. This stopped for a while, but recently we were at a family event when his brother and her showed up. My boyfriend seemed to get more excited and took his camera out and started to film her. They are just very flirty and laughy with each other. I know they have a close bond. What I don't know is if it's completely normal and brother-sister-like, or if this is sexual tension and they have feelings for each other. I did bring this to my boyfriend's attention, and it turned into a very bad argument. He accused me of being jealous and insecure when I was just trying to tell him some of the things that are making me uncomfortable. He told me why would he do that to his brother, and if I brought it up again, he would leave the relationship. I'm starting to feel like they have had sex, or are secretly having sex, or are in love with each other. I almost feel like I have to compete for my boyfriend's attention with this girl when this girl is around, and I shouldn't have to feel like that. That is his brother's girlfriend. He is just way too involved in their relationship and is always a threesome with them and leaving me out. It's getting annoying. I want some serious outside opinions, or if anyone has experienced this or has even been on the other side of the situation. I'm tired of feeling like this, and I'm honestly thinking of leaving this relationship.
Has anybody experienced it?
Well, no. I've experienced my friends that they thought that some of my family members were attractive,
Mhm.
but I think that's different than what this is.
Right. So nobody's experienced this. Like she wants. No.
No.
No, I haven't.
No.
I don't think so. But I also have a really terrible memory, so.
Oh.
Maybe she has. She just doesn't remember it.
Yeah, no, I've never experienced anything like this before. Brother-in-law type of sister-in-law situation.
So, I mean, I think what it comes down to is we don't really know enough to know whether she's just being jealous. It's good that she brought it up.
Do you
All
think...
dogs.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to ask, do you think it's weird that she went into the shower or went into the bathroom while he's taking a shower to get a Kleenex?
Depends.
What kind of shower do they have?
Actually, that's a valid question.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It depends. Like, I don't know. Have you ever had to blow your nose real bad and...
Yeah.
How many bathrooms are in the house?
You know? I think that culturally it's unacceptable, but there's individual cultures within households. So if they're, you know, so there's factors that you have to consider. So like, what is the culture that she grew up in? What is the culture within that particular household? What is the status of the relationship with the brother, who she doesn't really talk about, for the record, and I think that's weird.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't know. Maybe she has bad boundaries, but it doesn't mean there's anything sexual connected to it. Maybe she's annoying to the boyfriend because she actually breaks boundaries all the time
Oh boy.
and has bad breath or whatever, but he does like her, you know, but she's still annoying. Like, there's a lot of reasons why it could be normal.
I have a hard time just because of the way that he responded to his girlfriend when she brought it up. Like, if you bring this up again, I'm breaking up with you. That kind of throws me in a red flag. If it was like a situation where the sister-in-law and the brother/boyfriend here, I'm gonna call him Rick, and the brother-in-law,
Okay.
or the brother.
Boyfriend and the brother.
So okay.
Okay. So
Anyway.
Richard.
And then he's dating Cynthia,
Okay.
but then he's got a brother.
Okay.
Draw a family tree.
Okay. Go for it.
That's Mark, and then Mark is dating Alexa, or maybe
Don't-
it's
don't
Yeah,
say that.
maybe don't say
maybe
Alexa.
Eliza. Okay. So maybe Rick and Eliza have a really cool bond, right? And they're really comfortable with each other.
Sure.
But that's just a different bond between Rick and Cynthia, his girlfriend. You know, maybe she's jealous of that. But then when Cynthia brought it up to Rick, he was like, "Don't bring this up again. I think she's ugly. She's not wife material and not good for Mark." You know what I mean? So that throws me in for a red flag. If it was like a solid relationship, he would have been like, "Yeah, we have a different relationship. She's like my sister, and I treat her the same way if I treat my brother." Like that. If that's too comfortable for you, I'm sorry, but I respect you, and you should know that from the bottom of my heart, and I love you. Like, realize where I'm coming from, where we fell in love with in the beginning. But he was deciding to end a relationship out of this. That's weird to me.
Don't you think that the way that she talks about it is a little bit suspect?
It's like both sides are really suspect.
Well, we only have the way that she talks about it, right? We
Yeah.
don't have
Both
his
true.
actual
true,
responses. But if his responses are, you know, that he's gonna break up with her, like, I don't know. It seems to me like she's engaged him multiple times on finding things weird. You know. I think that it's weird that she stares at him every time that the girl walks into a room.
Yeah, like what kind of...
I think it's
Situation
weird
going on
that
there.
he had a mark on her hand, that he had a mark on his hand that was distinct enough for her to be able to notice, and thinks that somebody else wouldn't notice it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really weird. I'm just really
Like,
confused.
I think, you know, she's talking about, like, they're looking at each other for a long time, and I just kind of get the idea of, like, the camera panning over to her, who's, like, giving him crazy eyes.
Look at this.
So, like, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
is it like the way that she talks about it, I just wonder if she's sort of the crazy one here.
It's really hard.
But let's assume that she's not. Let's assume, for the sake of our discussion, sorry,
For the next
it's like
10 minutes.
8 minutes till we're off the air.
This is a great one to end on.
Let's just
It's
assume.
good, it's good.
Let's just assume for discussion that she's not crazy and that she said this to him and he said that. So what should happen in that situation?
So he said that to her.
He said that to
in
her.
this whole
She said it to
situation.
him, like she brought it up, and then he said that to her. What do you do in a situation like this? Well, I think you got to decide. You want to be with him or not? That's what you got to
Yeah.
decide.
Well, she kind of already made that decision. I'm thinking of leaving.
Right. Well, that's what it sounds like.
Okay.
That's what it sounds like. The other question is, why not confront the girl about it?
Or the brother.
Or the brother.
Yeah.
I'd say there's a lot of places that you need to go, L-dubs. I'd say there's a lot of places that you need to go in this, and you seem a little paranoid. So maybe it's all true, but you got to talk to the brother. You got to talk. So first, but let's be clear. First, you want to talk to your boyfriend about it. That didn't work very well. You need to talk to the girl about it because you're essentially gossiping about her, right?
Mhm.
You're essentially assuming that she has these issues. So maybe you talk to her first before talking to the boyfriend. I don't know. That one's kind of a hard one depending on your level of intimacy. But
Sure.
you should talk to her about it for certain, especially if you're going to leave the relationship.
Come on.
Like, you need to talk to her about it. You need to talk to the brother about it because he's involved. You really should just get everybody in the room and talk about the
Intervention.
awkward elephant in the room.
Right.
But I wouldn't assume that because she feels comfortable enough to go into the bathroom. Look, I've had multiple living situations, and I have had people come into the bathroom while I was taking a shower before. Didn't mean anything.
You ever go to the military or jail? You don't really have a choice.
Right. So.
Whoa.
So I'm just. It doesn't. It just depends. It depends on what you grew up with. You
Yeah.
know? Like,
That could be a completely normal thing.
I would never pee with the door open, but I'll tell you, I can't get my father to close the door when he's peeing to save his life. Sorry, that's an overshare.
Yeah, and it's like if you're all family, sometimes people don't even lock the door.
That's what I'm saying.
You know?
It's true.
People have different cultural acceptabilities.
Yeah.
So just assuming that this means that, I think that you're jumping to conclusions, and that's kind of like presenting falsehoods. You're bearing false witness until you actually know. So instead of going to your boyfriend and saying that this girl and him are cheating, maybe calm down a bit. Maybe calm down a bit. Find out who she is.
Talk to
Get to
all the
know
parties
her.
involved.
Talk to all the parties.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
You
go to
know.
people on the internet who don't know
Right. Like it's not that
the
big
whole
a deal.
situation.
Based on what you're saying. Now, if it is true, then yeah, leave the situation. I mean, you are blessed, well, in theory. I mean, it's obvious that you have a sexual relationship with your boyfriend, which is violating what we talked about in our last segment. But you're blessed in that you're not married to him before men.
Legally.
And so, because you're not legally married to him, at least you have the possibility of getting out of the relationship. But but you should treat the relationship with care, and that means communicating.
Yeah.
So instead of building fantasies in your mind about what they are doing or not doing, communicate.
And
There
take
you
it
go.
all back to the beginning. Remind each other you love each other.
Yes.
Is there a
So.
freaking goat out there or something?
So.
No, there's a piece of bamboo that sways left and right. Or
I don't know.
whatever direction it sways.
Anyway, do you have anything else? Because we only got a couple minutes.
Couple minutes.
I mean,
More questions.
couple minutes. I have another story we could read.
No, we do not have time for another story.
I think
No, that's okay. Okay.
maybe another game.
So, we're gonna go ahead and just close our show out
Sounds
for
great.
the night. That's basically our show. Our
Yeah.
lines will be open for another hour or so feel free to reach out. Remember, you can contact us for the next 30 minutes or so at 971-208-5290. We will be here for advice, prayer, counsel for the next 30 minutes or so. You can hit us up on our chat profiles, on our Instagram, whatever you want to do. Remember, if this show has been of value to you, feel free to like, share, subscribe, do all those things. Yeah, if you want to donate to our services or learn more about us, check us out at abfpdx.org, and we will be back on. We'll be back in service on Monday night, so you can send us messages and stuff on Monday nights. But NITE LITE Radio will be on the air and live on Thursday of next week. But our counseling page and Facebook accounts are always open, so send your messages, topics to discuss. Yeah, talk to you soon. Good night, and stay vigilant.
The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of the Lafayette Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.